Well, happy Friday, world. I'm your host, much cuter than Willie Montague. I'm Shakhea Hinton. Tonight, we'll dive into redistricting and how gerrymandered maps could backfire on those in power. We'll discuss immigration and its impact on our country. Speaking of impact, we'll dive into Australia's social media ban on Generation Alpha. And last but not least, Letitia James's failed indictment and how this big, beautiful blow to the DOJ will send folks into a tizzy. All right, it's time for Americana. Well, historically, maps are redrawn every decade to align with the census, typically if the year ends in the number 1, to be exact. For example, 2011, 2021, 2031, so on and so on. You get it, right? Well, you may be wondering, why are some states redrawing maps mid-decade, Shakhea? Well, the answer is simple. It's for political gain. You see, lawmakers draw maps that give their party a higher advantage of winning key races. And there are 2 ways that they do so. The first way is called packing, kind of like how it sounds, which means to overload one district with the same type of voter so they have less power in other districts. And then the other is called cracking, whoopsh, which is breaking a group apart so their votes are too spread out to make a difference. Well, last week, lawmakers in Texas bowed the knee, kissed the ring, and granted President Trump, of his wish for gerrymandered maps. Although the lower courts in Texas found their proposed map to be racially motivated, Texas's Supreme Court ruled in its favor. Shocking? Shouldn't be. It's an intentional way of keeping power, even if that means doing so by discriminating and undermining the process of democracy. But don't you fret. The fight for other states isn't quite over yet. Recently, lawmakers in Indiana have refused. I'm going to say this again. They have flat out refused Trump's push for a mid-decade redrawing of the maps. Now, this comes as a major blow to Trump's fragile ego and has presumed he has now vowed to support anyone who will run against the GOP lawmakers who defied his orders. Now, I don't know about you, but I call that a bully. So, in my little commentary with you all, since I'm by myself, I want to propose a question for you at home, the viewers. What would you do if your district was gerrymandered? How would you protest against that? Well, I believe some voters may actually remove their voting status. Do I want that? Absolutely not. But we'll see in this upcoming midterm election, okay? Speaking of a bully, let's get into immigration, shall we? Well, during Trump's 2024 campaign trail, he championed removing violent criminals and deporting them back to their country. Well, within 10 months, he has allowed the removal of not only undocumented individuals, but also legal immigrants, refugees, and specific nationalities. To name a few, Somalians, Venezuelans, Haitians, Cubans, Nicaraguans, Latin American immigrants, and the list could go on. Why? Because no one seems to be safe, even if you have legal documentation. The administration and their handlers, who I affectionately refer to as ICE, are so obsessed with this purging that they've rounded up and deported a veteran, y'all, who served this country and earned a Purple Heart. Now, there could be others like this, but we won't know the full impact until the dust settles, if it ever will. Trump's evil obsession with this act of ethnic cleansing will, and in most cases already has, impacted the workforce by shrinking in size, raising the price of consumer goods, and have a lasting traumatic effect on folks who now have been separated from their families. Now, tell me this. How exactly is that making America great again? If I'm not mistaken, people who are currently in this country on a working visa, excuse me, have the right to be here, correct? Well, according to Trump and his administration, they don't believe so. If you recall, yesterday on the show with Mr. Willie Montague, we discussed the new concept of a green card. Excuse me. Not a green card in the actual literal sense, but Trump is now proposing a platinum card or a gold card. And yes, it has his face on the front and back of it, as Trump style would. It's alarming to me because Trump has this, not a fetish, but he has an obsession with a lot of things, and particularly with immigrant communities, whether be it black or brown. He is coming full force, and no one is safe. Coming up soon, January 1st is actually Haitian Independence Day. That is where we celebrate the culture, the diaspora, the accomplishments, the achievements of those who have been actually making this country great and even better. But according to Trump, he wants to purge that. That is ahead of ending TPS. Now, what is temporary about someone who is actually contributing to this economy? What is temporary about someone who is finding a better life in this country? Well, according to Trump and his ICE handlers, they don't see them as useful. So what would you do if your neighbor, whom you have the utmost respect for, who you've seen grow up from a little boy to a young man, if he was detained by ICE? What would you do if a little girl was riding her bicycle to school and you see a van, an unmarked car, snatch her off her bicycle and throw her into the back seat? What would you do if you see a dozen or so people who've gone through the due process of becoming a legalized citizen as they're raising their right hand to take the oath to become a citizen in these United States, if they were hauled off by ICE? What would you do? Or what have you done if you've been a witness to this? There are many apps now who are allowed to alarm people if ICE is in the area. Are you utilizing those services? Are you a whistleblower? Would you call ICE so that you could redeem a reward? What would you do? That is my question for you. Now, going back to the voting, the gerrymandered maps, I'm extremely excited about Texas. You would think, Kia, why? Because of the historical vote that they did last week with, accepting the map that Trump and his cronies have actually passed through legislation. Why would I be excited about that? Well, my excitement comes from the announcement of the current Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She announced her candidacy to run for Senate. Now, with that same gerrymandered map, she could actually break the glass ceiling even more and become the senator of said district for that gerrymandered map. I wonder how Trump would feel if a black woman defied the odds once again and beat him at his own game. Now that will be how you make America great again. In addition to Texas, we have Gavin Newsom, Democrat governor of California. He also has decided to join the fight in gerrymandering his own maps. This time, it's in the favor of the Democratic Party. So with his map that has passed, he would now gain 5 additional seats in Congress. Sounds like a good thing, right? It is to an extent. But we now have 11 or so other states who are also fighting for the same advantage. Who will win? We shall see. Florida is on the docket. We have Utah, we have Kansas, New York, Illinois, Virginia, Maryland. So 12 in total are actually in the process of trying to figure out how their maps will look. I look forward to seeing how this plays out in the upcoming midterm election. Well, we have to take a quick commercial break, but don't you move. I'll be right here when you get back. This is Americana. Well, welcome back, beautiful people. Australia, the land down under, has implemented the world's first national social media ban for users under the age of 16. It went into effect on December 10th of this year, so a couple of days ago. Companies have to prevent children from using social media or creating any social media accounts on major platforms. Platforms affected will include Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, as my grandma would say, Snapchat, X, YouTube, Reddit, Threads, Twitch, Kick, and any other social media platform I may have forgotten to mention. But watch this video.
In 1 week, Australia will become the first country in the world to ban under 16s from having social media accounts. With one law, we can protect Generation Alpha from being sucked into purgatory by predatory algorithms described by the man who created the feature as behavioural cocaine. Teenage addiction was not a bug, it was a design feature. And on 10 December, there are going to be withdrawal symptoms. Teenagers will be upset, some will fight to get back on, some will manage to find their way around the tech and keep their accounts. But I truly believe the short-term discomfort will be worth the long-term benefits.
Benefits. Well, many Americans feel that we could also benefit from that law, but many believe that our lawmakers aren't interested in protecting our children, only exploiting them. Can you imagine a country where children under 16 years old would be less concerned about the latest trends or comparing themselves to what they see on social media and actually be a kid again? I'm old enough, I'm not going to tell my age, but follow me. I'm old enough to remember my mom having a car phone. Better yet, a house phone with the cord. And let's not forget a beeper. Well, some people may call it a pager, depending on where you're from. Either way, I had a pink one and it was on my hip. Well, the evolution of technology is inevitable, but protecting our children shouldn't be. So I applaud Australia's stance and hope to see legislation passed in America adopting the same protections. What say ye? Speaking of protections, my favorite topic of tonight, which would be Miss Letitia James, who is New York's 67th Attorney General. She walked away without the smell of smoke. Just joking. She walked away without a second indictment. That's right. A grand jury wasn't able to present probable cause of her committing mortgage fraud charges, and yes, ma'am, they dismissed it. Rightfully so. So if you know a little bit about this, for context, Ms. James filed a civil suit against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and 3 of his adult children back in 2022. The lawsuit was about, drumroll please, that's right, favorable loans, insurance coverage, tax advantages, and other financial perks. Well, in 2024, a New York judge favored James's suit and ruled in her favor and ordered Trump and the others to pay a substantial amount of coin. When I say substantial, what I mean is over $450 million. Now, I don't know about you. I don't have that laying around anywhere, but the court said that they had to pay. Well, and that and impose other business restrictions. However, as luck would have it, in August of this year, an appeals court upheld the finding of fraud, but voided the monetary penalty and called it as excessive. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So now that I've shared that context, I hope it clarifies why this second indictment against James is a blow for Trump, yet a victory for those who are upholding justice. So let's dig a little bit into that. When I say the name Letitia James, in the comments or at home, I want you to talk back to me. Talk back to your screen. It's okay. I'll answer eventually. Letitia James, Black woman, New York City. I think she was New York City's first Black person of her profession. So you have her, you have Zohran Mamdani. There's a lot of progress that's happening in New York, the state that Trump got his start in. So I wonder how this is going to make Mr. Trump feel. Tingly inside? Who knows? I'm pretty sure we'll see in a couple of hours, probably even right now, him on a Twitter rant or an X rant or a Truth Social rant. And I'm pretty sure, y'all, this is not the last of Trump. He is going to try his darnest to get her indicted, get her arrested. For some reason, Trump is extremely obsessed with Black power, be it electoral power, be it Black women, be it Black progress. I mean, this, my friends, is progress. Progress that many of us would not be able to achieve if it had not been for our ancestors. If you watched yesterday's show, you would have seen my co-host and I go toe-to-toe as we talked about civil rights and its impact on our community, on our culture, on our world. So, what say ye? Do you think Trump is obsessed with Black political power? Do you think Trump is obsessed with Black women? Do you think he shudders like Mufasa when he hears the word Black? You Blacks. I could just hear him now in my ear. It's crazy what a culture could do to a human. It's crazy how much sleep he loses over Black joy. If that weren't the case, we wouldn't be regressing in our laws. If that weren't the case, he wouldn't be fighting so hard to redistrict many of these states. If that weren't the case, he wouldn't be traveling over the country trying to convince the American people that America is great. No, not necessarily. It's not great for everyone. It's great for a certain caliber of person or demographic of people or bank account for his friends. So if America is great for you, I would love to hear from you. Tell me how America is great for you. If you find yourself as a part of the majority who is like, no, it's not great, this is how it could be better, I'd like to hear from you too. Drop that in the comments. If you are like, I am just here by the grace of God, I am just here, just living my final days to the fullest, YOLO, as people used to say. I don't know if they still say that. But if you are YOLO right now in Trump's America, tell me about that. I need joy. You need joy. There needs to be a glimmer and a slimmer of hope for the American people, for all, not just for certain few, not if you weren't born here on this soil. We all need joy. So, what brings you joy? For me, knowing that these gerrymandered maps will backfire on the GOP brings me quite joy. And let me tell you why. Trump is doing everything that he can to convince the American people that America is great, right? I think I've said that earlier. In doing so, he is actually pissing the people that put him in office off. People who didn't think that his policies would impact them are pissed. Folks who actually were a part of Latin America, voted for him, had signs and hats and did all the things, are actually having buyer's remorse. Now, this is not me saying I told you so. However, many of us stood on the corners with bullhorns. Many of us took to social media. Many of us just was in the streets, at the dinner table, sharing with you what Project 2025 actually would do if we elected this fool into office. And here we are, 10-ish, 11-ish months later into his presidency, and nearly 75 to 80% of Project 2025 has been implemented. Now, this is just 10, 11 months into his presidency. We have another 3 years with this administration. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Americana. Thank you so much for tuning in with me. I will be back on Monday, and so will my co-host, Willie Montague. If you like the two of us together, place that in the comments. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you same time, same place on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend.